Sigmund Freud, /FRD/Freud 3 German, Zygmunt FT, born Sigismund Shlomo Freud, May 6, 1856 September 23, 1939, was an Austrian neurologist and the founder of psychoanalysis, a clinical method for treating psychopathology through dialogue between a patient and a psychoanalyst. Freud was born to Galician Jewish parents in the Moravian town of Freiburg, in the Austrian Empire. He qualified as a doctor of medicine in 1881 at the University of Vienna 5-6. Upon completing his habilitation in 1885, he was appointed a docent in neuropathology and became an affiliated professor in 1902. Freud lived and worked in Vienna, having set up his clinical practice there in 1886. In 1938 Freud left Austria to escape the Nazis. He died in exile in the United Kingdom in 1939. In creating psychoanalysis, Freud developed therapeutic techniques such as the use of free association and discovered transference, establishing its central role in the analytic process. Freud's redefinition of sexuality to include its infantile forms led him to formulate the Oedipus complex as the central tenet of psychoanalytical theory. His analysis of dreams as wish fulfillments provided him with models for the clinical analysis of symptom formation and the underlying mechanisms of repression. On this basis Freud elaborated his theory of the unconscious and went on to develop a model of psychic structure comprising id, ego, and superego. 9. Freud postulated the existence of libido, an energy with which mental processes and structures are invested and which generates erotic attachments, and a death drive, the source of compulsive repetition, hate, aggression and neurotic guilt. 10. In his later work Freud developed a wide-ranging interpretation and critique of religion and culture. Though in overall decline as a diagnostic and clinical practice, psychoanalysis remains influential within psychology, psychiatry, and psychotherapy, and across the humanities. As such, it continues to generate extensive and highly contested debate with regard to its therapeutic efficacy, its scientific status, and whether it advances or is detrimental to the feminist cause. 11. Nonetheless, Freud's work has suffused contemporary Western thought and popular culture. In the words of W. H. Auden's 1940 poetic tribute, by the time of Freud's death, he had become a whole climate of opinion under whom we conduct our different lives. 12. Biography. Early life and education. Freud was born to Jewish parents in the Moravian town of Freiburg, in the Austrian Empire, later Elbe, Czech Republic, the first of 8 children. 14. Both of his parents were from Galicia, in modern-day Ukraine. His father, Jacob Freud, 1815–1896, a wool merchant, had 2 sons, Emmanuel, 1833–1914, and Philip, 1836–1911, by his first marriage. Jacob's family were Hasidic Jews, and although Jacob himself had moved away from the tradition, he came to be known for his Torah study. He and Freud's mother, Amalia Nathansohn, who was 20 years younger and his third wife, were married by Rabbi Isaac Noah Mannheimer on July 29, 1855. 15. They were struggling financially and living in a rented room, in a locksmith's house at Schlossergasse 117 when their son Sigmund was born. 16. He was born with a caul, which his mother saw as a positive omen for the boy's future. 17. In 1859, the Freud family left Freiburg. Freud's half-brothers emigrated to Manchester, England, parting him from the inseparable playmate of his early childhood, Emmanuel's son, John. 18. Jacob Freud took his wife and 2 children. Freud's sister, Anna, was born in 1858, a brother, Julius, born in 1857, had died in infancy, firstly to Leipzig and then in 1860 to Vienna, where 4 sisters and a brother were born: Rosa, b. 1860, Marie, b. 1861, Adolphine, B 1862, Paula, B 1864, Alexander, B 1866. In 1865, the 9-year-old Freud entered the Leopoldstadter Communal Realgymnasium, a prominent high school. He proved an outstanding pupil and graduated from the Matura in 1873 with honors. He loved literature and was proficient in German, French, Italian, Spanish, English, Hebrew, Latin and Greek. 19. Freud entered the University of Vienna at age 17. He had planned to study law, but joined the medical faculty at the university, where his studies included philosophy under Franz Brentano, physiology under Ernst Bruck, and zoology under Darwinist Professor Karl Claus. 20. In 1876, Freud spent 4 weeks at Claus's zoological research station in Trieste, dissecting hundreds of eels in an inconclusive search for their male reproductive organs. 21. He graduated with an MD in 1881. Early career and marriage. In 1882, Freud began his medical career at the Vienna General Hospital. His research work in cerebral anatomy led to the publication of an influential paper on the palliative effects of cocaine in 1884, and his work on aphasia would form the basis of his first book on the aphasias, A Critical Study, published in 1891. Over a 3-year period, Freud worked in various departments of the hospital. His time spent in Theodore Maynard's psychiatric clinic and as a locum in a local asylum led to an increased interest in clinical work. His substantial body of published research led to his appointment as a university lecturer or docent in neuropathology in 1885, a non-salaried post but one which entitled him to give lectures at the University of Vienna. 22. In 1886, Freud resigned his hospital post and entered private practice specializing in nervous disorders. The same year he married Martha Bernays, the granddaughter of Isaac Bernays, a chief rabbi in Hamburg. The couple had 6 children: Mathilde, b. 1887, Jean Martin, b. 1889, Oliver, b. 1891, Ernst, b. 1892, Sophie, b. 1893, and Anna, b. 1895. From 1891 until they left Vienna in 1938, Freud and his family lived in an apartment at Berggasse 19, near Innere-Stadt, a historical district of Vienna. In 1896, Minna Bernays, Martha Freud's sister, became a permanent member of the Freud household after the death of her fiancé. The close relationship she formed with Freud led to rumors, started by Carl Jung, of an affair. The discovery of a Swiss hotel log of August 13, 1898, signed by Freud whilst traveling with his sister-in-law, has been presented as evidence of the affair. 23. Freud began smoking tobacco at age 24, initially a cigarette smoker, he became a cigar smoker. He believed that smoking enhanced his capacity to work and that he could exercise self-control in moderating it. Despite health warnings from colleague Wilhelm Fliess, he remained a smoker, eventually suffering a buccal cancer. 24. Freud suggested to Fliess in 1897 that addictions, including that to tobacco, were substitutes for masturbation, the one great habit. 25. Freud had greatly admired his philosophy tutor, Brentano, who was known for his theories of perception and introspection, as well as Theodore Lipps, who was one of the main contemporary theorists of the concepts of the unconscious and empathy. 26. Brentano discussed the possible existence of the unconscious mind in his Psychology from an Empirical Standpoint, 1874. Although Brentano denied its existence, his discussion of the unconscious probably helped introduce Freud to the concept 27. Freud owned and made use of Charles Darwin's major evolutionary writings, and was also influenced by Eduard von Hartmann's philosophy of the unconscious, 1869. 28. Though Freud denied having read Friedrich Nietzsche until late in life, analogies between his work and that of Nietzsche were pointed out almost as soon as he developed a following. One historian concluded, based on Freud's correspondence with his adolescent friend Eduard Silberstein, that Freud read The Birth of Tragedy and the first two of the Untimely Meditations when he was 1729. In 1900, the year of Nietzsche's death, Freud bought his collected works. He told his friend, Fliess, that he hoped to find in Nietzsche's works the words for much that remains mute in me. Later, he said he had not yet opened them. 30. Freud came to treat Nietzsche's writings as texts to be resisted far more than to be studied. His interest in philosophy declined after he had decided on a career in neurology. 31. Freud read William Shakespeare in English throughout his life, and it has been suggested that his understanding of human psychology may have been partially derived from Shakespeare's plays. 32. Freud's Jewish origins and his allegiance to his secular Jewish identity were of significant influence in the formation of his intellectual and moral outlook, especially with respect to his intellectual nonconformism, as he was the first to point out in his autobiographical study. 33. They would also have a substantial effect on the content of psychoanalytic ideas, particularly in respect of the rationalist values to which it committed itself. 34. Development of psychoanalysis. In October 1885, Freud went to Paris on a fellowship to study with Jean-Martin Charcot, a renowned neurologist who was conducting scientific research into hypnosis. He was later to recall the experience of this stay as catalytic in turning him toward the practice of medical psychopathology and away from a less financially promising career in neurology research. 36. Charcot specialized in the study of hysteria and susceptibility to hypnosis, which he frequently demonstrated with patients on stage in front of an audience. Once he had set up in private practice in 1886, Freud began using hypnosis in his clinical work. He adopted the approach of his friend and collaborator, Joseph Breuer, in a use of hypnosis which was different from the French methods he had studied in that it did not use suggestion. The treatment of one particular patient of Breuer's proved to be transformative for Freud's clinical practice. Described as Anna O., she was invited to talk about her symptoms while under hypnosis. She would coin the phrase talking cure for her treatment. In the course of talking in this way, these symptoms became reduced in severity as she retrieved memories of traumatic incidents associated with their onset. Freud's clinical work eventually led him to the conclusion that more consistent and effective symptom relief, compared to that achieved by using hypnosis, could be obtained by encouraging patients to talk freely, without censorship or inhibition, about whatever ideas or memories occurred to them. In conjunction with this procedure, which he called free association, Freud found that patients' dreams could be fruitfully analyzed to reveal the complex structuring of unconscious material and to demonstrate the psychic action of repression which underlay symptom formation. By 1896, Freud had abandoned hypnosis and was using the term psychoanalysis to refer to his new clinical method and the theories on which it was based. 37. Freud's development of these new theories took place during a period in which he experienced heart irregularities, disturbing dreams, and periods of depression, a neurasthenia which he linked to the death of his father in 1896-38 and which prompted a self-analysis of his own dreams and memories of childhood. His explorations of his feelings of hostility to his father and rival-roused jealousy over his mother's affections led him to fundamentally revise his theory of the origin of the neuroses. On the basis of his early clinical work, Freud had postulated that unconscious memories of sexual molestation in early childhood were a necessary precondition for the psychoneuroses, hysteria and obsessional neurosis, a formulation now known as Freud's seduction theory. 39. In the light of his self-analysis, Freud abandoned the theory that every neurosis can be traced back to the effects of infantile sexual abuse, now arguing that infantile sexual scenarios still had a causative function, but it did not matter whether they were real or imagined, and that in either case they became pathogenic only when acting as repressed memories. 40. This transition from the theory of infantile sexual trauma as a general explanation of how all neuroses originate to one that presupposes an autonomous infantile sexuality provided the basis for Freud's subsequent formulation of the theory of the Oedipus complex. 41. Freud described the evolution of his clinical method and set out his theory of the psychogenetic origins of hysteria, demonstrated in a number of case histories, in Studies on Hysteria published in 1895, co-authored with Joseph Breuer. In 1899 he published The Interpretation of Dreams, in which, following a critical review of existing theory, Freud gives detailed interpretations of his own and his patients' dreams in terms of wish fulfillments made subject to the repression and censorship of the dream work. He then sets out the theoretical model of mental structure, the unconscious, preconscious, and conscious, on which this account is based. An abridged version, on dreams, was published in 1901. In works which would win him a more general readership, Freud applied his theories outside the clinical setting in The Psychopathology of Everyday Life, 1901, and Jokes and Their Relation to the Unconscious, 1905. 42 and 3 essays on the theory of sexuality, published in 1905, Freud elaborates his theory of infantile sexuality, describing its polymorphous perverse forms and the functioning of the drives, to which it gives rise, in the formation of sexual identity. 43. The same year he published fragment of an analysis of a case of hysteria, Dora, which became one of his more famous and controversial case studies. 44. Relationship with Fliess. During this formative period of his work, Freud valued and came to rely on the intellectual and emotional support of his friend Wilhelm Fliess, a Berlin-based ear, nose, and throat specialist whom he had first met 1887. Both men saw themselves as isolated from the prevailing clinical and theoretical mainstream because of their ambitions to develop radical new theories of sexuality. Fliess developed highly eccentric theories of human biorhythms and a nasogenital connection which are today considered pseudoscientific. He shared Freud's views on the importance of certain aspects of sexuality: masturbation, coitus interruptus, and the use of condoms in the etiology of what were then called the actual neuroses, primarily neurasthenia and certain physically manifested anxiety symptoms. 45. They maintained an extensive correspondence from which Freud drew on Fliess's speculations on infantile sexuality and bisexuality to elaborate and revise his own ideas. His first attempt at a systematic theory of the mind, his Project for a Scientific Psychology, was developed with Fliess as interlocutor. 46. Freud had Fliess repeatedly operate on his nose and sinuses to treat nasal reflex neurosis. 47 and subsequently referred his patient Emma Eckstein to him. According to Freud, her history of symptoms included severe leg pains with consequent restricted mobility, and stomach and menstrual pains. These pains were, according to Fliess's theories, caused by habitual masturbation which, as the tissue of the nose and genitalia were linked, was curable by removal of part of the middle turbinate. 48-49. Fliess's surgery proved disastrous, resulting in profuse, recurrent nasal bleeding. He had left a half-meter of gauze in Eckstein's nasal cavity, the subsequent removal of which left her permanently disfigured. At first, though aware of Fliess's culpability, Freud fled from the remedial surgery in horror. He could only bring himself to delicately intimate in his correspondence to Fliess the nature of his disastrous role, and in subsequent letters maintained a tactful silence on the matter, or else returned to the face-saving topic of Eckstein's hysteria. Freud ultimately, in light of Eckstein's history of adolescent self-cutting and irregular nasal and menstrual bleeding, concluded that Fliess was completely without blame. as Eckstein's post-operative hemorrhages were hysterical wish bleedings linked to an old wish to be loved in her illness and triggered as a means of rerousing Freud's affection. Eckstein nonetheless continued her analysis with Freud. She was restored to full mobility and went on to practice psychoanalysis herself. 50-51. Freud, who had called Fliess the Kepler of biology, later concluded that a combination of a homoerotic attachment and the residue of his specifically Jewish mysticism lay behind his loyalty to his Jewish friend and his consequent overestimation of both his theoretical and clinical work. Their friendship came to an acrimonious end, with Fliess angry at Freud's unwillingness to endorse his general theory of sexual periodicity and accusing him of collusion in the plagiarism of his work. After Fliess failed to respond to Freud's offer of collaboration over publication of his 3 essays on the theory of sexuality in 1906, their relationship came to an end. 52. Early followers. In 1902, Freud at last realized his long-standing ambition to be made a university professor. The title Professor Extraordinarius 53 was important to Freud for the recognition and prestige it conferred. There being no salary or teaching duties attached to the post, he would be granted the enhanced status of Professor Ordinarius in 1920-54. Despite support from the university, his appointment had been blocked in successive years by the political authorities, and it was secured only with the intervention of one of his more influential ex-patients, a Baroness Marie Ferstel, who had to bribe the Minister of Education with a painting. 55. With his prestige thus enhanced, Freud continued with the regular series of lectures on his work which, since the mid-1880s as a docent of Vienna University, he had been delivering to small audiences every Saturday evening at the lecture hall of the university's psychiatric clinic. 56. From the autumn of 1902, a number of Viennese physicians who had expressed interest in Freud's work were invited to meet at his apartment every Wednesday afternoon to discuss issues relating to psychology and neuropathology. 57. This group was called the Wednesday Psychological Society, Psychologische Mittwochsgesellschaft, and it marked the beginnings of the worldwide psychoanalytic movement. 58. Freud founded this discussion group at the suggestion of the physician Wilhelm Stekel. Stekel had studied medicine at the University of Vienna under Richard von Krafft-Ebing. His conversion to psychoanalysis is variously attributed to his successful treatment by Freud for a sexual problem or as a result of his reading The Interpretation of Dreams, to which he subsequently gave a positive review in the Viennese daily newspaper Neues Wiener Tagblatt. 59. The other 3 original members whom Freud invited to attend, Alfred Adler, Max Kohane, and Rudolf Reitler, were also physicians. 60. And all 5 were Jewish by birth. 61. Both Kohane and Reitler were childhood friends of Freud. Kohane had attended the same secondary school, and both he and Reitler went to university with Freud. They had kept abreast of Freud's developing ideas through their attendance at his Saturday evening lectures. 62. In 1901, Kohane, who first introduced Stekel to Freud's work. 56. Had opened an outpatient psychotherapy institute of which he was the director in Bayernmarkt, in Vienna. 57. In the same year, his medical textbook, Outline of Internal Medicine for Students and Practicing Physicians, was published. In it, he provided an outline of Freud's psychoanalytic method. 56. Kohane broke with Freud and left the Wednesday Psychological Society in 1907 for unknown reasons, and in 1923 committed suicide. 63. Reitler was the director of an establishment providing thermal cures in Douro tear gas which had been founded in 1901. 57. He died prematurely in 1917. Adler, regarded as the most formidable intellect among the early Freud circle, was a socialist who in 1898 had written a health manual for the tailoring trade. He was particularly interested in the potential social impact of psychiatry. 64. Max Graf, a Viennese musicologist and father of Little Hans, who had first encountered Freud in 1900 and joined the Wednesday group soon after its initial inception. 65. Described the ritual and atmosphere of the early meetings of the society. The gatherings followed a definite ritual. First, one of the members would present a paper. Then, black coffee and cakes were served, cigar and cigarettes were on the table and were consumed in great quantities. After a social quarter of an hour, the discussion would begin. The last and decisive word was always spoken by Freud himself. There was the atmosphere of the foundation of a religion in that room. Freud himself was its new prophet who made the heretofore prevailing methods of psychological investigation appear superficial. 64. By 1906, the group had grown to 16 members, including Otto Rank, who was employed as the group's paid secretary. 64. In the same year, Freud began a correspondence with Carl Gustav Jung, who was by then already an academically acclaimed researcher into word association and the galvanic skin response, and a lecturer at Zurich University, although still only an assistant to Eugen Bleuler at the Burghalsli Mental Hospital in Zurich. 66-67. In March 1907, Jung and Ludwig Binswanger, also a Swiss psychiatrist, traveled to Vienna to visit Freud and attend the discussion group. Thereafter, they established a small psychoanalytic group in Zurich. In 1908, reflecting its growing institutional status, the Wednesday group was renamed the Vienna Psychoanalytic Society. 68. In 1911, the first women members were admitted to the society. Tatiana Rosenthal and Sabina Spielrein were both Russian psychiatrists and graduates of the Zurich University Medical School. Prior to the completion of her studies, Spielrein had been a patient of Jung at the Burghalsli, and the clinical and personal details of their relationship became the subject of an extensive correspondence between Freud and Jung. Both women would go on to make important contributions to the work of the Russian Psychoanalytic Society, founded in 1910-69. Freud's early followers met together formally for the first time at the Hotel Bristol, Salzburg on April 27, 1908. This meeting, which was retrospectively deemed to be the first International Psychoanalytic Congress 70, was convened at the suggestion of Ernest Jones, then a London-based neurologist who had discovered Freud's writings and begun applying psychoanalytic methods in his clinical work. Jones had met Jung at a conference the previous year, and they met up again in Zurich to organize the Congress. There were, as Jones records, 42 present, half of whom were or became practicing analysts. 71 in addition to Jones and the Viennese and Zurich contingents accompanying Freud and Jung. Also present and notable for their subsequent importance in the psychoanalytic movement were Karl Abraham and Max Eidengon from Berlin, Sander Ferenczi from Budapest, and the New York-based Abraham Brill. Important decisions were taken at the Congress with a view to advancing the impact of Freud's work. A journal, the Jahrbuch für Psychoanalytische und Psychopathologische Forschungen, was launched in 1909 under the editorship of Jung. This was followed in 1910 by the monthly Zentralblatt für Psychoanalyse edited by Adler and Stiekel, in 1911 by Imago, a journal devoted to the application of psychoanalysis to the field of cultural and literary studies edited by Rank, and in 1913 by the Internationale Zeitschrift für Psychoanalyse, also edited by Rank. 72 plans for an international association of psychoanalysts were put in place, and these were implemented at the Nuremberg Congress of 1910, where Jung was elected, with Freud's support, as its first president. Freud turned to Brill and Jones to further his ambition to spread the psychoanalytic cause in the English-speaking world. Both were invited to Vienna following the Salzburg Congress, and a division of labor was agreed with Brill given the translation rights for Freud's works, and Jones, who was to take up a post at the University of Toronto later in the year, tasked with establishing a platform for Freudian ideas in North American academic and medical life. 73 Jones's advocacy prepared the way for Freud's visit to the United States, accompanied by Jung and Ferenczi, in September 1909 at the invitation of Stanley Hall, president of Clark University, Worcester, Massachusetts, where he gave 5 lectures on psychoanalysis. 74. The event, at which Freud was awarded an honorary doctorate, marked the first public recognition of Freud's work and attracted widespread media interest. Freud's audience included the distinguished neurologist and psychiatrist James Jackson Putnam, professor of diseases of the nervous system at Harvard, who invited Freud to his country retreat where they held extensive discussions over a period of 4 days. Putnam's subsequent public endorsement of Freud's work represented a significant breakthrough for the psychoanalytic cause in the United States. 74 When Putnam and Jones organized the founding of the American Psychoanalytic Association in May 1911, they were elected president and secretary respectively. Brill founded the New York Psychoanalytic Society the same year. His English translations of Freud's work began to appear from 1909. Resignations from the IPA. Some of Freud's followers subsequently withdrew from the International Psychoanalytical Association, IPA, and founded their own schools. From 1909, Adler's views on topics such as neurosis began to differ markedly from those held by Freud. As Adler's position appeared increasingly incompatible with Freudianism, a series of confrontations between their respective viewpoints took place at the meetings of the Viennese Psychoanalytic Society in January and February 1911. In February 1911, Adler, then the president of the society, resigned his position. At this time, Stekel also resigned his position as vice president of the society. Adler finally left the Freudian group altogether in June 1911 to found his own organization with 9 other members who had also resigned from the group. 75 This new formation was initially called Society for Free Psychoanalysis, but it was soon renamed the Society for Individual Psychology. In the period after World War I, Adler became increasingly associated with a psychological position he devised called individual psychology. 76. In 1912, Jung published Wandlungen und Symbole der Libido, published in English in 1916 as Psychology of the Unconscious, making it clear that his views were taking a direction quite different from those of Freud. To distinguish his system from psychoanalysis, Jung called it analytical psychology. 77 Anticipating the final breakdown of the relationship between Freud and Jung, Ernest Jones initiated the formation of a secret committee of loyalists charged with safeguarding the theoretical coherence and institutional legacy of the psychoanalytic movement. Formed in the autumn of 1912, the committee comprised Freud, Jones, Abraham, Ferenczi, Rank, and Hans Sachs. Max Eidengon joined the committee in 1919. Each member pledged himself not to make any public departure from the fundamental tenets of psychoanalytic theory before he had discussed his views with the others. After this development, Jung recognized that his position was untenable and resigned as editor of the Jahrbuch and then as president of the IPA in April 1914. The Zurich Society withdrew from the IPA the following July. 78. Later the same year, Freud published a paper entitled The History of the Psychoanalytic Movement, the German original being first published in the Jahrbuch, giving his view on the birth and evolution of the psychoanalytic movement and the withdrawal of Adler and Jung from it. The final defection from Freud's inner circle occurred following the publication in 1924 of Rank's The Trauma of Birth, which other members of the committee read as, in effect, abandoning the Oedipus complex as the central tenet of psychoanalytic theory. Abraham and Jones became increasingly forceful critics of Rank, and though he and Freud were reluctant to end their close and long-standing relationship, the break finally came in 1926 when Rank resigned from his official posts in the IPA and left Vienna for Paris. His place on the committee was taken by Anna Freud. 79 Rank eventually settled in the United States, where his revisions of Freudian theory were to influence a new generation of therapists uncomfortable with the orthodoxies of the IPA. Early psychoanalytic movement. After the founding of the IPA in 1910, an international network of psychoanalytical societies, training institutes and clinics became well established, and a regular schedule of biannual congresses commenced after the end of World War I to coordinate their activities. 80. Abraham and Eidengon founded the Berlin Psychoanalytic Society in 1910 and then the Berlin Psychoanalytic Institute and the Polyclinic in 1920. The Polyclinic's innovations of free treatment and child analysis and the Berlin Institute's standardization of psychoanalytic training had a major influence on the wider psychoanalytic movement. In 1927 Ernst Simmel founded the Schloss Tegel Sanatorium on the outskirts of Berlin, the first such establishment to provide psychoanalytic treatment in an institutional framework. Freud organized a fund to help finance its activities and his architect's son, Ernst, was commissioned to refurbish the building. It was forced to close in 1931 for economic reasons. 81. The 1910 Moscow Psychoanalytic Society became the Russian Psychoanalytic Society and
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.